This ability to develop and test quickly is upending some of the old rules of finding product market fit, and I think it makes marketing a little bit harder.
Allyson Letteri is a marketing exec turned startup advisor and author of the Standout Startup.
There are many channels that would work for one startup that would be the exact wrong fit for another startup because they're selling to different people who are influenced in different way and gather in different spaces.
She helps early stage founders with messaging, positioning, and go-to-market strategies that drive growth.
Ultimately, the goal is to get your product and its value in front of the people that need it most.
She's built and scaled teams at Thumbtack and Handshake from Series C to Unicorn.
Anyone who has a founding role needs to understand how to create and refine messaging over time because it will forever be a part of your company's process.
In this episode, Allyson shares practical frameworks founders can use immediately to gain traction and revenue. Enjoy. Allyson, welcome to Authority in the Wild.
Thanks, Gabe. Great to see you.
Likewise, and I'm really excited to talk to you today simply because we live in a world that's full of hype around AI, and I know that it's harder than ever to stand out as a startup. And I want to start exactly there. Like, what's changing and what stays the same into this world?
Yeah, there's been a massive shift in how companies are building over the past couple of years. And I work primarily with very early stage tech startups. So pre-seed, seed, Series A, maybe they've just gotten their funding, but they are still rapidly evolving, trying to find product market fit and identifying those first customers who can really get a lot of value from their product. The good news, I think, from a marketing perspective, is the fundamentals of how you define a really effective go-to-market strategy aren't changing. And so we'll talk through some of that today. But if you've launched a company before and you've identified your ideal customer, you understand how the competition works and what differentiates you, those are the main things you need to know to nail your messaging, create a great content strategy, and start standing out. But one thing I'm seeing is that because the speed to market is so different now, companies can develop products and get them out there in days, if not weeks. Sometimes I'm seeing startups actually build something and then try to find a buyer, find someone with a problem that this can solve. And that is challenging because it's easier to go to market when you have a strong understanding of a customer, their pain points, how you're creating value for them, and then you can create messaging with a lot of conviction around that. So this ability to develop and test quickly is upending some of the old rules of finding product market fit. And I think it makes marketing a little bit harder.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's funny that you brought that up because I think last week I had a conversation with someone that's in the exact same situation, the second one, in which they already developed an amazing product and they spent literally, I think, 2.5 years already. They have some interest and so on, but it's so hard to actually find someone to put some money into that startup. And if you want, we can tackle both sides, like with the traditional way, because I'm a true believer as well that you need to understand your customers and their pain points in order to be able to create worthwhile solutions. So that still some people are in the second situation. Which one you want to go first with?
Well, let's go first with how do you start to create effective messaging, which I think is really the foundation of any strong marketing strategy. What often happens when a founder finds me, usually through a VC referral or hearing about me from another founder, is that they know that their messaging is off. The way they're describing their product is either not clicking with the people that they think should really value their product, or they're doing fine in sales conversations, but their website is multiple versions behind what they're saying in real time. The product has evolved so much, their understanding of the customer has evolved so much, and it feels chaotic because they can't actually invite a prospect into any kind of experience that's going to educate them about the product properly. So where I always start with a founder, whether they've found and identified the customer yet or they're still working on it, is by defining what I call the 3 Ps. So this starts with trying to get as much fidelity as you can about your persona, positioning, and personality so that you're able to create that strong messaging. And even if you're iterating quickly, you're testing with one segment of customers over the next 2 weeks in a sprint, and you quickly realize those aren't the right fit, so you pivot to another group, this same process will work. So the first P persona, it's really identifying three layers: the company that you're selling to, the ICP, ideal customer profile company, and the characteristics that qualify them to be a great fit. And then it's thinking about who's on the buying committee, and specifically, who is the entry point to get into this organization? Whose attention do you need to catch to make them interested in a product like this? Because they'll either be the internal champion or they feel the pain most acutely. So they would be the ones searching for and vetting a product like yours. And then once you identify that, it's really getting into the mind of that persona and figuring out, how can I describe this product in a way that shows we really understand their pain points and what they need to solve, and we can deliver the results they want. So that's one lens. And again, whether you are really clear on that, you just haven't codified it yet, or you're in this rapid test cycle, always starting with customer understanding to shape your messaging is the most important step one. But the other lens you really have to bring to it is that positioning, or that competitive lens. What makes us different and better, and the no brainer best choice for this customer? And I think a lot of founders can maybe describe the value to the persona once they figure out exactly who they're selling to, but it can feel harder to articulate, why us? Why are we better than the alternatives? And in many cases, that's because the product is relatively bare bones at first, right? It's got the essentials to solve a problem, but it doesn't necessarily deliver a super differentiated user experience or benefits. And that's where the founder really working hard to make it very clear why us, why we're different and better, becomes a top priority.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges indeed, because often most people out there, and not only in startup world, like small businesses and so on, they find so hard to differentiate, because they say like, I'm selling the same thing, I'm solving the same problem like anyone else. What they should look out for in order to find those things that really make them stand out?
Yeah, it's a great question. Usually, you're going to be differentiating your product or your service on either the exceptional benefits it provides. So you're able to deliver an outcome or a result that someone can't get from another product because of the way it's built, your feature set, the way you operate as a company, or you're differentiating on user experience. So we deliver the exact same benefits you might find through some other product, but it's going to feel so much more delightful to use our product. And that is going to have emotional benefits and other pieces. So the first question I'd ask is, which camp are you in? Or maybe it's a combination of both. Is it the better experience, or is it the better outcomes? And that gives you a starting point. But another activity I really like to do with companies is what I call a flip the matrix exercise. So, step one is thinking about that sort of traditional 2 by 2 positioning matrix. Get really clear eyed about the current market. So, who are your biggest competitors? Going back to that ICP company and persona, what's the short list of alternative solutions they're going to be choosing among? So don't boil the ocean. It doesn't need to be 20. It's, what are the 3 to 4 that you will consistently come up against in sales conversations? And think about, in today's world, why are your ideal prospects putting those products at the top of their list? What are the key attributes that are really making them stand out and seem like the best choice? And then you want to think about, okay, if we were going to flip this matrix where we're suddenly in the upper right quadrant and everyone else falls down, what are the attributes that would put us there? And again, it's probably going to be something about the user experience or the benefits you offer. But the idea here is, those other companies are great. They're doing something good. There's a reason customers are choosing them. But you want to position your company in a way that says, but they're not the best for you. What you need to be optimizing for is these other 2 attributes, which our product or service delivers better than anyone else. And so seeing it on that new matrix gives you confidence to say, these are the things that really set us apart. And this is why you should choose us. And by the way, make sure that comes through loud and clear in your messaging on your website. Don't bury the lead. That's one of the most important things you want to make really pop.
So on that point, with messaging, I feel like a lot of people confuse this term with I don't know, things that are thrown out there, like, oh, maybe it should be my link in bio, maybe it should be my headline on the website or the landing page, it should be something else. What truly is a clear, what are the components of a clear message?
Yes, I love that question. So, what I'm talking about is a product messaging framework that helps you describe the value and the differentiators of your product to your ideal customer. And when you have this framework nailed, you will feel very confident about what you should put on your homepage. You'll have a lot of clarity around your sales narrative. It unlocks a lot of pieces that feel chaotic until you figure this out. And so, there's really three main components. First, I mentioned that the insights you need to be able to create this framework come from the three Ps. So, understanding your persona, your positioning, and your personality, which we might want to touch on. Once you have those insights, then the three components of the messaging framework at the top is a USP, a unique selling proposition. And this is really the one liner elevator pitch about your product that everyone in your company can repeat. And you might have slightly different versions depending on the context or if you're talking to one customer segment versus the other. But a really nice formula to start with is our product is a what. So, what's the category you're in, or what type of product are you? For who? So, what types of companies or person should be using your product? Make that very clear. That delivers what type of transformation. And so, for instance, in my last role, my last full time role as VP marketing at Handshake, our USP is Handshake is a early career network that helps employers hiring entry level talent find and hire the best people for their roles. So made it clear what types of companies should hire us, and that the big promise was hiring and that you would be able to find the right candidates on our platform. The second key component of a messaging framework is three value proposition pillars. And three is a nice magic number. It can be four or five if you have that much unique value. But the idea is, what are the three most important messages that someone needs to know about the benefits your product provides that makes them realize, yes, this is valuable to me, and this is different than I can get anywhere else? And just to continue the Handshake example, the three value prop pillars for us were: one, you get data that allows you to target candidates that you can't find anywhere else. So you will simply not be able to find this type of data on LinkedIn, Indeed, or any other job platform. And that lets you be more accurate with your targeting. The second was the ability to build brand with Gen Z college students. So we had modalities and different ways to stand out, because a big pain point for a lot of the prospective customers was college students didn't know their company existed. So, how could we get discovered and be seen as an attractive brand? And then the third key component was reach. So, lots of different ways to interact with college students through events, messaging, news feeds, that type of thing, to get on their radar. And that combination of value propositions made us look really different from the other leading job platforms and really compelling to companies who wanted to hire college students. The other nice thing about these value props is they're benefit statements, but they're supported by features. So think about what features and functionality enable you to deliver each of these buckets of value. And many times the features you're releasing over the next 6, 12, 18 months will reinforce one of those value prop pillars. So it becomes this consistent way of talking about your product and how to think about its value. And then the last, but maybe most important part of the messaging framework is proof points. And so we already talked about one type of proof point: features that prove you can deliver that value. But the other two types are social proof. So customer quotes, testimonials, external endorsements, press, podcasts, anything that validates you deliver the value you say you do from a third party. And then the third piece is data and information. So, how can you quantify the results? And also, how can you think about long form content, guides, other things that support and show expertise? And all of these proof points are meant to help a prospect feel more confident that they can get the results you promise and that you can actually deliver those. So, this is the messaging framework. It's pretty straightforward. I have a template for it. But then once you have that, it almost becomes a wireframe for your homepage or a landing page that you might create for that customer.
Indeed, because it touched on all the important points, and often some people might overlook the third one, which is, if you cannot prove it, that your solution is actually working, no one will buy it. The thing that people struggle with, because it's often, if you, let's say the second example that you give at the beginning, a startup that they build an amazing product, but they don't have customers yet. They know the solution is great and so on. They truly don't have real social proof out there that, all right, this is actually working. This provide these tangible results for those particular businesses or customers and so on. How you make that happen? What should you do in that situation?
It's such an important question. And I was actually at an event at a VC just a couple nights ago, and this was a hot topic because we were talking to some founders that said social proof was the thing that helped us get traction with our, not our very first customers, but our next set of customers. But how do you fast track that? How do you get it when no one's using your product yet? And so, a couple things. One of the most important and easiest first ways to get social proof is for design partners to agree that they are going to give feedback that you can make public. And so, many technical founders I work with have a period of time where they're really co developing the product with early customers who maybe aren't paying at all, who are paying a very reduced rate, but they're getting lots of feedback and refining the product. And then those customers, with an asterisk, can become that first social proof. And ideally, there's an agreement early on that they're going to provide input or a case study or a quote that you can use publicly. Another couple things I'm seeing startups do to fast track that, some are bringing in advisors who are either peers to the people they're selling to, like a VP of a people team or a head of engineering, someone that both gives the founder a lot of great expertise as they're building the product, but also can be really helpful in the sales process because this advisor can come in and say, this is the exact type of product I would have adopted in my role or that I'm bringing into my company. And so sometimes that sort of peer validation, oh, okay, if they've vetted this and they believe it's a great product, then it gives me more confidence, can be a good fast track. And then the third thing I'll say is that customer stories and testimonials are an important part of social proof, but earned media and third-party endorsements can be helpful too. Citing who your investors are can build a lot of confidence in customers, but also getting those early wins, guesting on podcasts, getting early press, finding other influencers or authorities who, for instance, write newsletters or Substacks that get sent to the types of prospects that you're selling to. When you can contribute content or appear in that media, that's another form of early social proof that can give you some traction in that third-party validation.
Love it. And especially because that's a super smart way to, the example that you give at the beginning, to attract those initial data points. Because often when someone actually use the tool that you build in real life situation, that's much more useful than some random customers that you might get by chance, but they don't provide any feedback back. You don't have a proper way to get feedback from them. And on that note, how important is, from a go-to-market strategy, to get that initial data? And what are other ways to do it in order to ensure that you're not just building a solution you think might work?
I'm surprised by how many startups have found their way to me and they think they're going to launch in a couple months or even a couple weeks. And they've literally never had a real ICP type customer use their product. And there's this trade off of, do we create a big bang launch so we get attention and that'll bring more customers in? Or do we validate first? I think it's critical. I think it's very important to build with design partners or have early testing, plan to rapidly iterate on the product, but in tandem, rapidly iterate on your messaging because you're getting clearer and clearer on exactly what are we solving for who and why do they like us? What is the value we're providing? And that's what you need to emphasize. But you're also getting clearer on why would they choose us over other solutions? And sometimes that's tech solutions, right? Competitors that look similar to you, but for whatever reason, you've been able to differentiate. But many times I see startups are really competing against the option to either build in-house and not buy a tool, or continue to use kind of a piecemeal set of solutions that's working okay. But as a founder, you've got something that's significantly better because it's purpose built for solving that problem. So, all that said, that early iteration to get the product right, get the messaging right, then gives you a lot more confidence. And so many leaders think of marketing as lead generation, right? Filling the top of funnel, getting new customers in the door. But what happens if you put a lot of energy into that and then you don't have a clear story for them once they come in, either on your website or in your sales conversation, is it's just a leaky bucket. Those prospects stall. They don't really understand what you're talking about. So that rapid iteration early on to validate and have more fidelity helps. You will continue to iterate on messaging. This is a never ending process of honing. And it's part of why I think it's an essential founder skill set. It's not just a marketing skill set. It's anyone who has a founding role needs to understand how to create and refine messaging over time because it will forever be a part of your company's process. But having built with customers will help you have a lot of confidence as you do go bigger with your go to market, that you're saying things that will attract and convert the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it all boils down to that. Like, even when you understand them so well that when they hear you in your messaging, it's like, oh, that's me. That's exactly the problem that I'm facing. That's the solution that I need. And on the positioning part, like, what's your take on this approach that some people use when it comes to finding a common enemy?
I think creating really clear contrast with the alternatives is a smart thing to do. And it doesn't require you making them an enemy necessarily. You can say they're excellent. They are just not excellent for you, the customer I'm selling to. They are excellent for bigger companies or smaller companies. They're excellent for a marketing team, not a customer support team. Whatever it is, build a lot of conviction around what they're good for and what you're good for. And I think having some really clear ways of saying, they do it this way, we do it that way, or they approach it with this old system, we've built the new system, can be very helpful because the whole idea here is to cut through the noise, create decision shortcuts for prospects, and creating that contrast can really help. And when it comes to personality, the third P that we haven't really talked about yet, a nice way to do that is through both verbal brand identity and visual brand identity. So it's not just your messages, but how are you showing up in a way that makes it clear your product is really different from the other ones they're considering? Are you more modern? Are you more youthful? Are you bolder? Are you more supportive and soft? Anything works as long as it's creating contrast with the alternative.
And how much of that personality should come from the actual founder or anyone else in the team?
It's going to be a combination of founder and your product's superpowers. And so, one of the tools I really like in developing brand personalities is identifying your personality archetype, which is an age old structure. Carl Jung popularized it, but it's essentially 12 personalities that we as people innately understand. When we start talking to someone, we get a sense for how they operate. And you see brands in the world reflect these personalities. So, as an example, the innocent brand personality, their product superpower would be simplifying things, making something that feels chaotic or challenging really simple and straightforward for a team to use. So, Notion is an example of an innocent archetype. It's all about the fundamental building blocks. Their brand is black and white, very simple. So, everything is cohesive and drilling home. We will simplify the ability for your team to bring information together. Another common one I see with tech startups is the ruler, which is we take disparate systems, data that's all over the place, chaos, and we actually structure it into a system that works every time and is methodical and controlled. And so many startups that bring together data and help you get a great answer every time are the ruler archetype. So I encourage you to think about what is the way we create transformation for our customers. Is it through simplifying? Is it through getting things under control? Is it through motivating them to achieve a big goal? Is it through our expertise, which is the sage? And then that helps you come up with a nuanced way of talking. Your verbal brand identity the tone you use, the words you use. And it also helps you develop a visual brand identity that's really congruent with how you create change for customers. The reason the founder comes in is they're probably operating as one of these archetypes already. And so naturally, the first content they're creating, likely the way the website sounds and its first iteration reflects them. But it's important to ask, does our product create transformation in the way the founder likes to talk? Or do we actually need to evolve past that to really reflect the way we create change for customers and build affinity for the types of customers we're selling to with a tone that will resonate with them?
And I think I have a perfect quick challenge for you here. Since I know a founder, a friend of mine, that he's very tech savvy. He's a fantastic engineer, but it's extremely introverted. He's always behind the laptop, behind the scenes, not showing out there, and is the person that builds for over 2.5 years a product. But I think zero parts of his personality is shown inside the marketing part. Now his wife is taking over when it comes to PR and like talking to VCs and so on. And they still didn't raise any funding yet. They have some interest, some very bad deals they put for them on the table, they refused, and so on. How to approach that situation?
Yeah. So I think there's two components of this. There's the brand identity and personality, which we just talked about. But now we're thinking about founder led brand building. And it is true, and I think truer than ever, that the founder doing what they can to get their company noticed and to build authority and credibility is extremely helpful, both for fundraising, but also getting early traction with customers and building brand awareness. And so, the first place I would have that founder start is really think about what types of content would they feel comfortable creating and putting out there, given their own personality. Some people, okay, so a good way to sort of hide behind the business, but which is still helpful, is I encourage startups to create a capsule of content that will help them in the sales process. And usually there's a series of topics that help. The first is, what is content you would create that builds more problem awareness and understanding? Because lots of times AI startups, early stage tech startups, are actually tackling something that is quite cutting edge, and a company might not even realize it's a problem they have or that it's solvable yet. So, how can you create more problem awareness? The second type of content is, how can you explain to prospects the current solutions that are out there and why they're insufficient, why they're not solving the problem in the way they could or should, and you've developed a different way. The third part is just value prop content. So, going back to that messaging framework, what is content that helps showcase the value and the results that we deliver and our differentiators? And then the fourth and fifth buckets are social proof and data. So, case studies, data, stories, anything that quantifies or shows proof of results. And the fifth is just product content. What are guides or other things you might create for new users you're onboarding, or prospects who are trying to evaluate, how does this product work and would this actually be a fit for me and my team? Could I imagine us using that? That content will serve you very well in the sales process. And I can almost guarantee this person is starting with founder led sales too, right? They're having the first sales conversations. But that is also the type of content that you can splice up and start posting on LinkedIn to establish credibility and create a presence where it's not like a cult of personality. He doesn't have to put a lot of himself out there, but it's authoritative, helpful content that, if you start to drip out in a steady cadence, will get noticed. And if a prospect is looking into your company and goes to the founder's LinkedIn, it will show their authority in this space. So that's where I'd start. You really get sort of a two for benefit. You get this long form content that can help with the sales process. If it sits on your website, it creates a stronger mid funnel experience and also makes it more likely you'll show up in SEO and GEO results. And it finally is content that you can repurpose and post on LinkedIn. I like that you said his wife is also going to go for PR and earned media opportunities. Having a body of content for her to point to say, my husband or this founder is authoritative in this topic, will also help her land those guest spots or feel like a credible source for a journalist to reach out to. So that's where I'd start.
Yeah, the only thing is that he's not putting himself out there at all. So it's completely out of the picture. And I think that's the main challenge. There any way to succeed like that if you don't create yourself content? He should approach AI approach to content, create AI avatar or something, or should go out of this like fear of showing up and just break through the ice.
I think, yes, it's still possible to be successful. And I can talk about that in a moment. But I would say if they want to get any traction via social media specifically, it will be important for the founder to post something. Doesn't mean he has to put his own personal views out there, but there needs to be content related to what he's building and the company. And that's where having a body of content that's actually serving a purpose in the sales process and just posting three insights or a quote or pieces from that can be very helpful. A founder will get more traction through their own page on LinkedIn, through the company page. And if the idea is let's try to reach the right prospects, if that's a key goal, I would really encourage him to find a way that preserves his own desire not to feel in the spotlight, but still he's posting meaningful content. But to the core question of can you succeed as a startup without putting yourself out there? Yes, because ultimately the goal is to get your product and its value in front of the people that need it most. And so, even without a social media or an earned media presence, if this founder himself or through a team is going to events or participating in communities or going to a place where their prospects already gather or showing up in a media outlet where an influencer that's already reaching these people is going. The idea is where are people that you want to influence and reach already going and who are they listening to and how can you show up there? There are ways to do that without feeling like you have to put yourself out there on social media. And then the second bucket is just outbound, leveraging your network and warm connections and then slowly building a strategic outbound marketing program to reach your prospects and tell them about your product. Again, that does not necessarily require a social media presence or a big personality. That's just sort of a go to market motion that gets you in front of the right people and starts to pull them into ideally a set of content and experiences that help them get to know your product and then invites them into a sales conversation.
Yeah, and all of these are possible. And even the social media one, or to earn your attention through other means, media, podcast, and so on. Because, yeah, if I think just the short example about myself, being on podcasts, hosting my own podcast was never a small thought in my mind just a few years ago. And I was an introvert as well. At least I consider myself one. And if you do certain things, so to my friend, if you're listening, just try. Record something that you don't intend to put out there just for yourself. And slowly, you'll be able to do so. Put yourself out there. And but that thing that you mentioned to be where they are, how do you identify as a founder the right rooms to stay in? Because, for example, in this example, his wife attend a lot of events, but most of them are waste of time. How do you separate from those that potentially you'll just go travel there, spend a lot of money on flights and so on, and you'll just spend a few days without any results?
Right. I think there's two interrelated but different goals of being where people are. One is building your own credibility and authority. And it's you as the founder, but really any leaders at your company. How can they be viewed as credible leaders in your space, which will help you in the sales process? But then there's the demand gen aspect of it. How do we get in front of prospects so they know about our product and want to learn more and are open to a sales conversation? So how in any part of your marketing strategy, how do you figure out what to test and where you want to go depends in huge part on that first P question, the what is your ICP and who are the exact types of people you need to reach. And if there's an industry event but the types of people who you need to reach and influence to get into a company aren't going to be there, that's the wrong event for you. So being very clear-eyed and honest, There are many channels that would work for one startup that would be the exact wrong fit for another startup because they're selling to different people who are influenced in different way and gather in different spaces. So, for instance, I'm working with one startup right now who they are selling to developers, and those developers aren't gathering live in person at conferences, but they're very vocal in a set of communities where they're sharing information related to this product and the product it solves, the problem it solves. So the product leader from this company is in those communities daily, really just participating in conversations, but it's building up his profile. And at certain times, he's able to talk about their product and how it's solving the problem and show authority. So that's an example of that would be the wrong fit for one company, but it's the perfect fit for them. The other thing I'd say specifically about live events is sometimes having the booth or walking the floor isn't the best way to meet people. It's often what's happening outside the event I see is what's working for startups. So, how can you pull to get people together in a coffee or a workshop or a happy hour that promises value that is not just you're going to hear a sales pitch, but it's talking about the latest changes and things that are happening in your industry or with a problem you're solving. And if someone hears that topic, they'd think, oh, I would love to know that, even if I'm not interested in the product. So it makes it worth my time. That's how founders tend to be able to get people to come and talk to them and engage. And then that opens the door to more conversations.
I love that example. And there is a famous founder, he's from UK, Daniel Priestley, that he moved from Australia. The first thing that he did, he organized an event in which he brought some influenced people that he invited them. And just by managing to get one famous name into the event, he mentioned that name after that to the others. This person is coming and so on, and invited to dinner. And then him, as the organizer, hosted a small talk, a few minutes, introduce himself, what he's up for, and so on. And that led him to run and launch multiple startups because he built already that network from the get-go. But obviously that needs certain type of personality and experience. I want to pivot a bit to hiring because you built numerous teams at Thumbtack, Handshake, from Series C to unicorns. Like, what should be the first hire for a founder when maybe they already get some seeds around already or at different stage and so on? What they should hire first?
Yes. So I see marketing teams tend to develop in a relatively similar series of stages, but the first hires tend to not be the first marketing leader or even the first full-time marketer, but tends to be a set of specialist freelancers or agencies that can help the founder start to test key parts of their marketing strategy. Oftentimes a content writer and a designer are great first hires because that allows the founder to not have to spend a lot of their time developing some of the longer form content or the social posts, but lets them leverage someone. And now with AI, they might be able to get away without a writer, but there's still a lot of editing and formatting and other things that are required to really get into a consistent content flow. So oftentimes a freelance hire there can be helpful. Designer, just to not borrow frequently from the product design team that is probably already overwhelmed, to be able to create critical assets. And then sometimes, depending on your ICP and persona that you're going after, you might want to spend on a PR freelancer or agency, or potentially test some paid ads or ABM type ads early on. All of that can be done without a full-time hire. But then what tends to happen is at some point it's too much for the founder to handle on top of all of their other responsibilities. And so the first full-time marketing hire, the sweet spot tends to be someone who's got enough experience that they can run parts of the strategy from scratch. They're not intimidated by coming into a very bare bones situation, but they are not so senior that they feel like they need to hire a team the moment they come in to get the work done. They're ready to be hands-on. And so that's a particular type of profile. And it's usually someone who's motivated by that blank page and the desire to build, the potential upside of the equity and the prospects of the company. They feel very passionate about the idea and they want to see this thing grow. And they're motivated by the idea that if they do a great job, they very likely will get permission to hire and have resources. And so that first marketing hire, I like to think of it as a major and a minor. You're usually either hiring someone who's got strong demand gen experience because your main company goal is acquisition. And so you're hiring someone who has managed campaigns and programs to attract and convert prospects or get leads to the sales team. Or you're hiring someone with a major in product marketing whose main goal is figuring out these questions of who are we targeting, who are our competitors, why are we different and better, making sure the website, sales enablement collateral, and other content is in great shape, and eventually taking on feature launches and customer retention type activities. But your first marketer needs to spike in one of these areas, but be able to do the other thing. And then usually the second hire is the person who majors in their minor, if that makes sense. So if you hired a very strong demand gen leader, your second hire would very likely be a strong product marketer to balance that out and have really the full set of capabilities that a marketing team needs as you continue to build out and scale up.
Nice. And I think this is the most interesting part of the startup phases because often hiring is such a tricky situation, but at the same time, it's like a lot of testing, a lot of challenging moments. But when you made that amazing hire and you build the product further, you manage to put it in the hands of the clients, then the wins start to come in and you're like, oh, I made the right decision. And on that note, what did you look out for when there are some maybe red flags or things that is all right, so maybe I need to fire now, or how fast you should fire actually?
Yeah, I think there's firing for underperformance versus letting someone go for fit. Like they are no longer the right person given the strategy your company needs to grow. And I see both happen at startups, early stage and growth stage. And so if you're seeing underperformance, I would say act fast. And I've made some mistakes in my own career where I didn't act fast enough. And it drags the team down. And you have to remember that anytime you need to replace someone, it's probably going to take a minimum of 3 months to find, interview, get approval for, and get someone in seat. So you're just delaying the inevitable. Many times, if you do have to let someone go for performance, that role was very vital. Today, there are increasingly more freelancers, fractionals, agencies that could step in for a time period and give you the time you need to vet the right full-time person because rushing into a full-time hire, again, can be very costly and challenging. But the other thing is fit. And I really appreciate founders who say, this person is incredibly skilled. They are great at their job. It is just not what we need anymore as part of our marketing mix. Or we don't need someone whose full time role is managing SEO because we're pivoting to something that SEO is not going to be the main driver of new leads. And so we actually need to use that full time role budget and capacity for someone who's got a different skill set. And so again, I would act quickly, but there are sometimes ways to create a bridge role for that person where they step in as a contractor and continue their work at a reduced rate or for reduced period of time. I just think there's more flexible arrangements today than there were even 5 years ago. And that's very advantageous for founders who need to move quickly and can't afford to have big gaps in talent for months at a time when those months are extremely precious when you think about what it takes to get fast traction.
And when startups hire you, often advisors are coming at different stages, different parts, so I would love to know when a startup comes to you as Allyson, you're the person to help me with this.
Yeah. I find there are really three main situations that I come into. So the first is early stage technical founder who is hands on with almost everything, is running a very lean team, and they themselves want to do what they can to get their messaging, their website, their sales deck into a better place. But they also realize they just have a gap in what is marketing. They have no frameworks in their mind for how to organize a marketing strategy, to really even know what components come into that. And so we're working on some essential things, including messaging and positioning, full funnel demand gen strategy. How do you think about top of funnel, mid funnel, and bottom of funnel? We're thinking about content strategy to fuel the sales process, but also to build their founder brand, as we talked about. And then sometimes we're actually working toward a launch, whether it's, their first public launch of the company or a significant new feature, or they're pivoting to a new customer segment because they've really found product market fit. So those are situations where founder is usually very hands-on, and maybe they have a chief of staff or another person that they're pulling in that also doesn't have a marketing background. So I'm coaching that whole group. The second situation tends to be the first head of marketing, who is this profile that we talked about that's, not managing a team yet, but has enough expertise to be dangerous, but they've probably taken on more scope than they've ever had in any role of their lives. They're working with a founder who doesn't really understand marketing, and they are fragmented, they are overwhelmed, and yet they're so hungry. They want to achieve these big goals. And so it's a mix of coaching them on strategy, but also how to navigate, think about building the team, think about how to advocate for themselves and educate their founder on the right way to assess a marketing strategy and initiatives. It's also working with the founder to help them best support that marketer and help them do their best work, because that can be a challenging relationship. Not to mention, there's all these other cross-functional dependencies. How is that head of marketing working with product, with sales, with customer support? So it's a tricky role. I've been in that role. And so now it's amazing to support these awesome leaders who are growing into that. And then the third one I'd highlight is I often work with Series C companies. For some reason, it's always Series C that are in a growth stage, but they are having to make a major pivot. So potentially something's really just shifted with their competitor. And so the way they've positioned themselves isn't working anymore. So they need a major messaging and maybe brand refresh overhaul, or they've decided to pivot their product. And this is happening a lot right now as legacy companies are building AI products and trying to figure out how to go to market with that. And they just need someone with a laser focus on how do we take this new thing to market, and how do we go back to basics, defining the ideal customer, the competitive set, positioning, refreshing our entire website, et cetera. And so I'm coaching often a pretty big established team through that process, because it's so deep in the day-to-day that it's hard to pull back and say, how would we do this over a 3 to 6 month period to go to market with this new thing?
And if any of these three categories are listening to us now, where they should reach out to you?
I'd love to hear from you. You can go to my website, AllysonLetteri.com, and it's very easy to contact me from there. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Allyson Letteri, and either place is a great way to reach me.
Awesome. And for anyone watching or listening, the links will be down below us. And Allyson, I want to conclude with a short trip back in time. You're still an employee and you're about to leave and start your advisory role. What do you really tell younger Allyson in that moment?
Hmm. Uh, well, first I'd say it's going to be awesome because this has been my favorite role ever, working with a wide variety of startups that are just making waves in the world, and they're changing our lives for the better. So it's an honor and an amazing role to be able to do. But something I really faced in the years leading up to this transition was, do I have enough experience? Will this be viable? Will anyone hire me? And how long should I keep going before I can be a credible and really effective advisor? And I'd say that staying through a couple full-time roles, building out teams at Series C startups, was a smart thing to do, because it gave me more breadth and depth of experience, just gave me more reps. I saw more things. I got, more experience in more marketing areas. And I think that depth and breadth has made me a much more effective advisor. Not to mention, I just got to manage more people, and that's really helped me as I coach. So I'd say keep going. The future is bright, but all of the experience that is hard won will be worth it and will sort of make the next phase even better.
This was Allyson Letteri on Authority in the Wild.